Up next, we have another San Antonio mayor joining us via Zoom because his travel schedule was a little complicated. We have former mayor of San Antonio, Julian Castro, who is now the president and CEO of the Latino Community Foundation.
Hello, everybody. First of all, let me just say thank you so much, Sarah, for the invitation to join you today. I'm sorry that I couldn't be there at home in person, but I couldn't miss the opportunity to join virtually. Sarah, thank you for the introduction, but even more importantly, thank you for all the wonderful work that you have led at MACRI. It has been absolutely amazing to see the way that you and the board have built up this organization over the last 5 years. Felicidades on this, your fifth anniversary MACRI Summit and celebration. So happy to be a part of it, to think about all of the work that y'all have done in these 5 short years, the impressive programming, the establishment of the visitor center, and the push in the future for something even larger, a fitting museum to commemorate and to celebrate the push for Mexican-American civil rights. I just want to say that none of this would have happened without your leadership and the leadership of the board and the staff, as well as the support of a community who appreciates the civil rights history in the Mexican-American community, many of whom in that room today who lived it, who learned from it, and who continue to support MACRI because they know that it's important that the next generation, not only of Mexican-Americans, but of all people, learns that history as well. It's fitting, as you have pointed out, Sarah, and many folks have pointed out, that San Antonio is the place where MACRI exists. Fitting because San Antonio in so many ways was ground zero for the push for Mexican-American civil rights, from the flourishing of LULAC that started in Corpus Christi and flourished in San Antonio, to the founding of MALDEF, to the push for educational equity that started in the Edgewood Independent School District and ultimately was decided by the Supreme Court in 1973 in SAISD versus Rodriguez. And then in the Texas cases that moved equity a little bit further, through the emergence of trailblazers in public service like Henry B. Gonzalez and Henry Cisneros and Maria Antonieta Perez-Zabal, and so many others, Joe Bernal and others, who pushed the envelope forward to make sure on behalf of the Mexican-American community and all Latinos and all people that our city, our state, and our federal government could live up to the best ideals in our Constitution. And also, San Antonio, of course, was a hotbed for Chicano and Chicana activism through the years, with the Raza Unida Party, with others who pushed for more political involvement and civic engagement and power in San Antonio, in Texas, and in the nation. I feel very fortunate to have had a front row seat to that. You know, my brother Joaquin and I on the 16 this year are going to turn 50. We were born in 1974 and born to a mom who was right in the middle of her activism in the Chicano movement. At that time in 1974, she was the chair of the local Raza Unida Party. And so we grew up in a household where we were taught the stories about Willie Velasquez and his activism at Southwest Voter, about the significance of Maria's election as a councilwoman in 1981 and Henry's election as mayor, the first Mexican-American mayor of a major American city that same year. And all of the sacrifices and the struggles that our parents and grandparents and their parents had made, whether they came many, many generations ago or during the Mexican Revolution or after that, the discrimination that they faced, and in the face of that, continued to work hard and to strive and to aspire to reach their American dream and to hand that baton of success off to the next generation so that they could take it even further. You know, one of the biggest honors of my life and privileges I had was serving President Barack Obama in his cabinet. And during that time, in March of 2015, I had the opportunity to attend the commemoration of 50 years since Bloody Sunday, that day in 1965 when John Lewis and fellow activists were beaten as they tried to march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma. That was a spark plug for the larger civil rights movement, the push for equality, ultimately the Voting Rights Act that Lyndon Johnson and Martin Luther King and others helped make possible. And during that commemoration, President Obama on the steps of the Edmund Pettus Bridge said that we had to acknowledge two things. First, that we've made tremendous progress when it comes to civil rights in our country over the generations. That we've seen the election of more people of color, of every background. We've seen more economic power. We've seen more equality in different ways. But he said also, and I agree, that there's still a lot of progress to make. When it comes to the Mexican-American community, I think it's true that we have to acknowledge the tremendous progress that we've made in this country. If you compare, for instance, the number of Mexican Americans or Latinas or Latinos in office today versus 50 years ago, there's no comparison. There's so many more today. If you compare the career opportunities that are available to young Latinas and young Latinos today who are going to college and going to graduate school and going and becoming engineers and software developers and business owners and teachers and so many other things to fulfill their dreams. That existed 50 years ago. There were trailblazers back then for sure, but so few compared to today. So many more career opportunities are open to our young people today than they really were 2 generations ago or before, or even in the last generation. We also have to acknowledge that today there is more economic power, more small businesses, more entrepreneurialism, more folks who have larger companies and the ability to compete for contracts in localities all throughout the country. We also see ourselves on television and in the movies today more than we used to, because we know that representation and what we see on film, on the screen, what we read about, it does matter. And in education, we see more of our young people getting their high school degree and then going on to college and getting their associate's degree or their bachelor's degree, going on to grad school. You have more doctors with the last name Gonzalez or Martinez or Hernandez. And so part of the success that we celebrate is the progress that we've made. In many ways, America is working its magic on the Latino community and vice versa. Our hard work, our aspirations have led to the success that our community has had. At the same time, 2024, I think, is a year where we can't avoid deep reflection and the necessity to understand not only the successes that we've had, the progress that we've made, but also to steady ourselves and to resolve to make more progress in the face of significant headwinds. Those headwinds include the fact that we're in the middle of a backlash to what happened after the murder of George Floyd in 2020. After George Floyd was murdered, we had a renewed push for racial equity and justice. And in so many ways, a new era of possibility dawned of more elected officials in office, of people of color, of corporations, many of them for the first time making commitments to hiring Black and brown employees and promoting them, and to putting people on boards and to investing in representation. Right now, just a couple of years later, we find ourselves in the opposite of that. States like Texas and a number of others in the South attacking diversity, equity, and inclusion. And companies, because of that, now scaling back the commitments that they made just a couple of years ago. And so it's important that in this year, 2024, and in the years to come, we do several things that I wanted to share today as we reflect. The first is that we have to continue to build civic and political power. You know, these days I have the opportunity to serve as the CEO of the Latino Community Foundation, which is the nation's largest Hispanic serving foundation that's based in the Bay Area. And so these days I'm commuting from home to California, and just started on January 1st. And as part of that, I've had the chance to visit big cities like San Francisco, of course, but also Los Angeles and others, and also small rural community. Just over the last couple of days, I was in places like Hollister, California, and Bakersfield, or Hollister, California, and Salinas, California, and Watsonville, and the central coast of the state. A couple of months back, I was in Bakersfield and Fresno and San Bernardino and Riverside, California. And one of the things that struck me is in so many ways, those communities in California are similar to our communities in Texas, large Mexican-American populations, a large number of immigrants, but the level of organizing in those communities is so much greater. The presence of community-based organizations that are doing work to organize, whether it's young people around protecting their rights, or senior citizens around any number of issues, or workers in unions. The investment in organizing, whether we're talking about 50 years ago or talking about today, makes a tremendous difference in ensuring that more people can get elected to office who understand the Latino community, and through their lived experience can help represent the interests of the community well, or even if they're not Latino or Latina, people who have a sensitivity to ensuring that the community is able to thrive, that they achieve equity. And so when we think about the fact that even today, even with the progress that we've made, we have less than 10%, Latinos are less than 10% of the overall elected officials in this country, even though we're almost 20% of the nation now. And as President Biden made clear in his remarks from a few days ago, Latinos are now 28% of the school-age children in the United States. So we need to continue to build power that produces political elected officials and greater civic engagement. We also have to build economic power. Ours is a very entrepreneurial community, and the history of San Antonio makes that very clear. I think about all of the families that came during the Mexican Revolution that started their own printing presses, or little tienditas, or opened up restaurants or dry cleaners, or any number of businesses. I think today of the way I grew up in San Antonio, watching everything from law firms to car dealerships to plumbing companies to even engineering firms that were Latino and Latina led and owned. And yet, even in a city like San Antonio, that's 64% Latino, if you go through each of the public agencies, whether it's the city or the county or CPS Energy or Saha or any number of others, oftentimes you'll find that the percentage of contracts that go to the community are within the single digits across a number of different types of contracts. That's absolutely unacceptable. And it doesn't reflect the level of talent or industry out there in our community. A couple of years ago, the Aspen Institute, with support from the San Antonio Area Foundation, did a study of these contracting numbers in San Antonio and in other places, and found inadequately low numbers across the board. We need to change that. And part of what I'm proud of that we're working on at the Latino Community Foundation is investing in entrepreneurship, investing in greater business opportunity, and fostering the ability of the community to gain greater economic power in our country. We also know that representation does matter. I'm proud of my brother Joaquin for the push that he's made from Congress to ensure that even as today, oftentimes blockbuster movies owe their success to the fact that from 30 to 35% of their audience are Latinas or Latinos, too oftentimes you don't see that on the screen or behind the camera. And we need to change that, whether it's on television or on film or on people's devices. It matters how our community grows up seeing itself. If I see another special on Netflix or documentary about the narcos in Colombia or in Mexico, uh, you know, uh, we're a lot more than that. And Hollywood and our entertainment industry and book publishing and all of the other sectors that influence how we think about ourselves and how others think about us desperately need to change, and we need to push to help change it. We also need to teach our history and make sure that it's taught to everybody. This is especially important today because that's the mission of MACRI. From the very beginning of this country, Mexican Americans and more broadly Latinos have been a part of its forward progress by contributing in every single way that people can contribute. We've fought in wars here at home and overseas. We've been small business owners. We have been teachers. We've been doctors. We've been lawyers. We've been elected officials, public servants, pillars of communities, including San Antonio. And so we have been a part of the story of what makes America special, just like any other community. But when you open up textbooks, whether in Texas or California or Arizona or wherever it's at, you still don't get to learn enough about that important history. And it's gotten even harder recently as the state of Texas and others have assaulted the ability of teachers to teach the true history of Texas and of the United States. That's why the work of MACRI is so important, and why I hope that everyone in this room will continue to support it as it seeks to grow and eventually to have a fitting museum in San Antonio of the Mexican American civil rights experience. I think that learning that history and building that economic power and civic and political power is not just an imperative for Mexican Americans or Latinos. It's really an imperative for our country. Today, the destiny of the Latino community and the destiny of the United States are intertwined like never before. I mentioned that almost 20% of our population now, according to the census, is Latino, and that 28% of our school-aged children are already Latina or Latino. That means that this country can only succeed in the years to come if Latinos succeed. And whether someone is a recent immigrant or their family has been here for generations, they deserve a seat at the table and the ability to contribute and to reach their dreams. When that happens, I'm convinced that we all can win. I've thought about that phrase recently, and as I started to prepare for this speech, because it still rings in my ears from a night in 1991 when my brother Joaquin and I accompanied my mom to Maria Berzaval's mayoral election night event on May 4th, 1991. They had it at a downtown hotel. And that evening, Maria had come out ahead in the runoff, in the mayoral runoff. And the election night party went on into the evening, and it came time to leave. And my mom and Joaquin and I walked out of the hotel that the party was at. And as I remember, we were walking along Commerce Street, and there was a woman there waiting at the bus stop with two young kids. And as we passed, she saw that my mother had on a Maria for Mayor t-shirt. Some of y'all may remember this was a beautiful design that I wish I had had when I ran for mayor. That was this royal blue with a simple white lettering that said Maria for Mayor. And the woman looked at my mom and she asked, did we win? And I remember that because I could tell, even at the age of 16, that she really wasn't just asking about whether a candidate had won. She was asking, did we win? Including, did my family win? It was a statement about what Maria represented to a lot of people at that time, but also, I think, it was a statement about what the best of civic engagement and political involvement and the push for equality and civil rights can mean for all of us, is that when we win with that, all of us win. And so, Sarah, I want to thank you for the invitation to be with you. I hope that this today and tomorrow are an opportunity to think about, through this work, through the teaching of history, through the building of civic and economic power, through the commitment to carry on the legacy of so many trailblazers that are part of the history MACRI highlights, that in the years to come, in this America, we can all win. Gracias.